Oh, welcome in to an emergency edition of that SEC podcast. Not your normal edition of the show. Putting this out on a Sunday. Big news in the SEC. I'm sure everybody wants to know Cousin Shane's thoughts on the Tennessee game. We'll get to that. I am going to record with Shane here in a little bit, couple hours. He's still at work. We'll recap all the action from Saturday, but I had to hop on here with an emergency show because Coach O out at LSU at the end of the season. LSU has not yet confirmed that, but multiple outlets, I believe Ross Dellinger, Sports Illustrated had it first. The Athletic has confirmed it. ESPN confirmed it. Ed Orgeron plans to finish out the season, but then he will be done at LSU. Not a total surprise, but the timing is certainly interesting because LSU just whipped up on Florida. And once again, Dan Mullen loses to Coach O despite having all these players out. Certainly didn't see that coming. Once, we both thought Florida would not only win the game but cover. What a terrible loss for Florida. But again, we'll get to all that when we recap the show for Monday's show. But this is all about Coach O out at LSU. The plan apparently is for him to finish out the season with LSU moving on at the end of the year. So I wouldn't even expect Coach O, we'll see. We'll see how fast LSU makes a replacement hire. But if they don't have a guy, we'll have to wait and see if LSU lets Coach O finish it out with a bowl game. But I would think even that you're probably not going to do because of the early signing day. You got to speed this process up. Now, why is this being done after a win against Florida? I certainly think you want to avoid a Les Miles 2015 scenario. LSU fans, of course, remember that. Maybe the rest of you in the SEC don't. Les Miles looked to be on his way out. The Tigers were trying to get Jimbo Fisher to come to Baton Rouge, and for whatever reason, there was a hiccup in the process. LSU rallied, beat Texas A&M, and Les Miles, I believe he was carried off the field. They decided to bring him back. So, hey, LSU got a little momentum. Can't have Coach O getting that last-minute support. Time to move on from Coach O. This is pretty wild, but LSU 9-8 under Coach O since winning the national championship. That's the stat that keeps getting thrown around. Again, Bruce Feldman of The Athletic is reporting that Coach O is going to get his full buyout. And depending on where you get your information, that Coach O buyout is around $17 to $21 million. So don't feel too bad for old Coach O. But it's pretty wild, man. I mean, he's right now, Coach O, 49-17 during his tenure there in Baton Rouge. He's 18-11 against ranked teams. He's 13-5 against top 10 teams. My goodness. And we're throwing this guy out, but I think this obviously has a lot more to do with the off-the-field issues than what he's doing on the field. Now that Coach O's out, we're getting all these stories, how the players were, thinking all these women's were a distraction. I don't know if I'm buying all that. I mean, I think once you push a guy out, all the dirty secrets come out. But The Athletic, Brody Miller, he had an interesting article. I encourage you all to read that. But apparently, Coach O made a pass at a pregnant woman who's married to high-up LSU administrator. So, we're going to get more and more stories like this, I would imagine, now that Coach O's out. I mean, all the dirty secrets will start coming out, and that's in addition to all the photos and everything we've seen. But I don't know if he's breaking any laws there, but just a bad look for LSU, and you compound that with basically a 500 team here since winning the national championship. That's not going to cut it at LSU. I certainly think with Texas and Oklahoma coming into the league here in the coming years, LSU wants to make sure they're in a prime position to stay at the top of the conference. Nick Saban, how many years has he got? LSU's got an opportunity here. They're somewhat at a crossroads. They screw up this hire, could really set the program back, could take years and years to get back. But obviously LSU fans got the confidence. 3 different coaches will have won national championships in the past, 15 years there in Baton Rouge. So the confidence level high that they will be able to, not skip a beat. I mean, that roster's loaded with talent. We'll have to see. Of course, in the transfer portal era, how this affects. Will there be a mass exodus? I don't know. A lot of players on this team, sophomores, freshmen, stand out. So this is a very, very attractive job. I think this is a more attractive job than the Southern Cal job that's currently open, and probably going to be more attractive than any job on the market. Of course, it is in the brutal SEC West, and as we've seen, hell, if you ain't winning it all, you're out in the SEC. And it's not just the SEC. How about this? I thought this was fantastic. A little nugget here from David Hale of ESPN. He's been on the show before, but look at all these coaches that have won the national championship outside of Nick Saban and Dabo that have been out at their institutions here in recent seasons. Of course, Ed Orgeron, Urban Meyer, 2014, 4 years later, out at Ohio State. Jimbo Fisher, 2013, 4 years later, out at Florida State. Of course, jumped to Texas A&M. Gene Chizik, out 2 years after winning at Auburn, of course. And Urban, again, at Florida, 2 years after winning the 2008 title, out at Florida. So, pretty wild. So, if you go win the national championship, you might be out of a job here in a couple years. So, it sure as hell doesn't buy you what it used to in terms of goodwill across the country. But very, very interesting. LSU plays Mississippi State. LSU plays at Ole Miss this upcoming week. Lane Kiffin, Ed Orgeron, that should be pretty wild. It's already been selected as the SEC on CBS Game of the Week. Now this is just going to add some fuel to the fire, but also, given the fact that they made this decision after the big win against the Florida Gators, leads me to believe that Scott Woodward is already eyeing, maybe even zeroing in on his next coaching hire. And again, you got to speed this process up as much as possible with the early signing period. LSU, I do believe, has a top 5 recruiting class. Now, is that going to be in shambles? It's going to be very, very tough to keep that thing together, but maybe that's part of the reason. Who knows? We may look back and this could be a stroke of genius to keep Coach O on and, maybe have discussions with these recruits, getting them to stay in Baton Rouge. We'll find out. I mean, we know the man. He's from LSU. He loves LSU. We'll see how hard he works for LSU now that there's a deal in place for him not to be there anymore. But this is going to be wild to see a farewell tour, so to speak, for Coach O in Baton Rouge the next couple of weeks. Got 6 games left to play, I believe. Sitting here with a 3-3 record on the year. And I'll close it out with this. I reached out to a contact of mine, and this guy really knows what he's talking about. He broke the Sam Pittman to Arkansas news. He broke the Josh Heupel to Tennessee news to me before it was ever reported anywhere else. So I really trust this guy. And I asked him, who's LSU looking at? And he threw out two. I think this is more speculation because these things are fluid and, I can change at a drop of a hat. But the 2 names that came out of his mouth, Louisiana coach Billy Napier, of course. I think that's going to be the top at a lot of these wish lists for LSU administrators. I think you're going to see that name time and time again. Billy Napier's been waiting for the right job. LSU certainly looks to be, you're not going to get much better than that unless old Nick Saban retires here at the end of the season. And then we get a Billy Napier bidding war. Of course, he's got ties to that Nick Saban program, used to be his receivers coach. And then the one other name, again, I've been hearing this elsewhere as well, but Michigan State's Mel Tucker used to coach under Kirby Smart at Georgia, coached under Nick Saban at Alabama. So, again, it all goes back to the GOAT. So we'll see. Again, it's very early in the process, but the fact that they're doing this in the middle of the season and this is already leaking, already coming out, leads me to believe Scott Woodward, the AD down there, has got to have a good feel for who he wants to be LSU's next coach. And just go look at Scott Woodward's track record. He's the one that hired Chris Peterson at Washington. He got him away from Boise. Scott Woodward's the guy that got Jimbo away from FSU to Texas A&M. He's hired, I apologize, I don't know her name, but the LSU women's basketball coach. I think she's won like 3 national titles at Baylor. I mean, this is an AD that hires some big name coaches. So make no mistake, LSU, the number 1 coaching job in the country that's open right now. You got to assume they are going to get an A-list coach, and cannot wait to see who that is. But that's going to do it for this emergency edition. And again, Shane and I are going to do a podcast as normal, but just wanted to get this one out there. I'll get Cousin Shane to get his thoughts on this as well. But we just wanted to do a little Sunday pod. And people are asking also, why no power rankings? I ain't watched all the games. We were in Neyland Stadium, so I got some games to catch up on, and I still got to do that before we hit the pod and before I put the power rankings out. But just wanted to give you guys a quick little update here on a Sunday.